point to something that Sharon said. It kind of made me think of something from recent, and maybe we could flush this out at a later time. But Dante Nero, great relationship coach, friend of the program. He called me yesterday. He was like, "I want to pick Dr. Carr's Brave." Through me, I guess. He wanted through me, but he brought up a subject that was, we had kind of touched on it previously, and he saw it on a podcast. I won't name the podcast, but in a nutshell, nativism, right? She talked about how can we. This is what Sharon said. How can we allow an illegal alien to come in and take over our government? And the subject on the podcast was nativism and nationalism. Is it inherently racist? Is it fair? Is nativism free of racism? Like, now let's take America off the table, because we already know what America is and how it was set up. But other places, when you think about the problems with so-called immigrants and the problem with so-called, dilution of culture. You got a country A is over here, and there's a constant influx of new citizens, new residents, illegal or otherwise. And country A says, we don't want them in here because we don't want our culture changed. Does that make them inherently racist, or are they ethnocentric? Are they protecting culture?
Well, I mean, there's nativists are, to have a nativist logic is to be exclusionary.
Right.
And to be inclusionary.
Sure.
Yeah. And so there are people who you don't want to be part of your polity. But in other words, because you're excluding them for whatever reason.
For whatever reasons.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make you inherently racist.
Well,
especially when race is a construct.
Race is, all of them are constructs.
Yeah.
Every last one of them are constructs. So when people say, race is a social construct, and it doesn't matter what you call the thing if it has the force of altering your life. My friend Lucius Outlaw, black philosopher out of Mississippi, who was many years on faculty at Haverford College, Lou would say, yeah, you see that bus coming down the street toward us? Yeah, I can step out in front of it, and I can call that bus the wind. But it's still going to run my ass over. Let me say race is a social construct. Sure it is, but it's still going to determine your life chances. Right. So nativists can certainly be generous. People say, United States of America is the greatest country in the world. We help people. Yeah, okay. That attitude doesn't have to necessarily conflict with the idea that you can't just come here.
Correct.
Understand that what people call open borders.
And if you bring me, you're tired and you're poor, but except you.
But see, all of that, there have been nativist sentiments that didn't have the force of law. Because understand, prior to the 1960s, the idea of people coming into the United States in some unregulated form was more the norm than the exception. And so what I'm saying is that the nativism as a sentiment absolutely can exist, and it can have a number of reasons for existing, of which race is one. Racism can exist in the same kind of exclusionary logic. You're not part of us. You're not that. And so, but it's more kind of an amorphous thing. It isn't tied to a particular territory. You think nativism, think territory, think space, think place.
Boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries.
Right. But nationality, if you're
well, nationality is different.
So nationalism and nativism, what's the difference?
Well, the difference would be a nativist might be, say, a member of a quote-unquote Latinx or Chicano community who voted for Trump in Texas because they think immigrants should stop coming from this country. That's a nativist. You asked about nationalism?
And then nationalism.
A nationalist might be someone who voted in that way, who is from a background, cultural identity that has more in common with the people who are in Mexico, who you share that with. And so on the way to the Cinco de Mayo celebration, on the way to the Day of the Dead celebration, you stop by the poll and vote for Trump. So in other words, you can have a national identity that transcends state borders and a nativist politics that cuts off the very people you are connected to. We see it every day with people of African descent.
Right.
Are you no African? As they move to do everything African in terms of the way they move through the world culturally.
So when we see what, how America is, right? Most of Americans, or the country, America's nationalism, personality, most of the nativism personality of America is based.
Two different concepts.
Sure,
Yeah.
but most of those are based in race, because that's what America was built on. So white nationalism, right? So white nationalism, that's forefront in America, in American policy, politics, blah blah blah, based in, one class basically oppressing the other.
Wait a minute, what? Say that again?
White nationalism is in an American sense is basically one class oppressing the other.
White nationalism is one group, I would say.
One group.
Because if I use the word class, I'm thinking automatically in terms of economy.
Okay.
And
one group. So that the nationalism, that's what it looks like here.
Well, white nationalism is the attempt of whiteness to control everybody's life.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So to that
I wouldn't
point
say one
here,
group against another. I want to make it sound like a binary.
Right.
That's how whiteness escapes. It tries to act like, it's just one more force operating. No, it's not one more force. It is the central force.
So
it is the cultural, political, economic logic of the last 500 years. Whiteness.
So in an American sense, the nationalism here is inherently racist.
I would say that American nationalism and American nativism is absolutely 100% racist.
All right. So in another place,
which is why you can't call George Washington what he was. George Washington, if we take just a basic definition of fascism toward black people, George Washington's a fascist.
Right. So
we say our country.
It's
like who is our?
To Dante's question, in an African country that is regaining its sovereignty, let's pick one.
Or gaining its sovereignty, because those boundaries didn't exist prior to the invasion of Africa.
We can pick one. We can pick one of many, right? And so, they're expelling, let's say, Chinese owners of the mines,
or other
kicking
people
them out,
of African
or
descent,
other people
based on their national group. I don't say tribes, because unless you're gonna call the French a tribe, then you're not gonna call the Yoruba a tribe.
So in that sense, then, to your point, and you're landing this beautifully, because I'm understanding it as you're speaking. In that sense, does their nationalism make them racist?
What? Wait. Race just got reintroduced.
Yeah, no, it was still there.
If you're talking about Rwanda,
we went from the American.
If you're talking about the Wahutu and the Watutsis in Rwanda,
no, I'm talking about like in Kenya, where they're kicking the Chinese out.
Well, not just the Chinese. What I'm saying is that you take, for example, the Rwandan genocide of the 90s, which was absolutely engendered by what the Belgians did in separating two groups that ate the same food, spoke the same language, but one group was farmers and the other group were traders or cattle. One were Hutus, one were Tutsis. The Hutus and the Tutsis.
Ethnic groups.
Yeah, but they are so similar. But what you do is you engender tension between them by taking the minority group and putting them at a different status than the majority. Then you withdraw and you see the slaughter, the genocide. Now, in that instance, one group to say the other group is another race. They're using the word race to as a marker for difference, even though they are virtually the same, except their trade, what they do. But at any rate, I said all that to say this: you could use race as that marker. It gets very confusing when that marker, the language which you use to describe different shifts. Is it race? Is it ethnicity? Is it clan? Is it tribe?
All right, how about
this? They're all markers for difference.
Let me modify my question. Is it ever fair for any group of people, sovereign group, nationality,
so you
with
introduce
borders,
the word sovereign.
Okay, with borders.
Okay, yeah.
Is it fair for any group to ever cast out another group for changing the culture of their nation?
It's a lot of stuff being introduced. First of all, the concept of sovereignty, the concept of the state. The villain of this, I've said this many times, and I do really believe this. Actually, I was down at the National Museum of African American History and Culture last night for a book signing, a new book on graphic novel on, interestingly enough, Reconstruction in Washington D.C. Very interesting. Kate Masur and a co-author has done this work. So I remember when the 1619 Project debuted, and we were at this same Oprah Winfrey Theater at the National Museum, and I was on a panel with Eric Foner and Nicole Hannah-Jones, Jake Silverstein, editor of New York Times Magazine, and we were talking about this concept of, I guess to use the parlance, what we're talking about right now, for lack of a better term, nativism in a sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, this country is a settler state, and the villain of the piece over the last 500 years has been the nation state. Who made citizenship?
The state itself.
Yeah. Who made citizenship the gold standard of people's humanity? We're all breathing. Because of where you came out of your mother's womb, you get denied social services. When people say, well, I'm a citizen, that should be banned as the gold standard for whether or not you're treated as a human being. I'm a citizen. Why does that make a difference on whether you ate today or not? Now, people would say, that's crazy. And I say, why do you think that's crazy? Is there not enough food? Are there not enough services? Well, we don't have enough. Who told you that? These nativists. These people told you that because it keeps separation. Think about this. One of the things that we're going to see challenged in terms of the Trump administration is Title I programs. In the programs you work at, the programs I worked at, the places we see these children come in, you're going to start separating people out based on whether they're a citizen or not to eat. When this is a Title I school district. No, they're going to try. Can you imagine that, man? I mean, this is the thing. You know what I'm saying? This is where citizenship, nativism is corrosive. And if anybody here listening, call in. In fact, let's get some of these calls. Call in and defend that. I want to hear it defended.
Well, I wanted to ask that question because Sharon kind of triggered that thought in me, and so
of course,
because people share that sentiment here,
of course,
even here,
of course, because that's, as
and
you
this
said,
is not even ours.
We've been socialized.
Yeah. All right, let's go. 866